Hope you don't mind my taking a sidestep this time around. Breaking away from the console games for a while, let's jump into the wonderful little world of the Game Boy Advance with Spyro Season of Ice and Spyro 2 Season of Flame. I'm covering both of these together purely for how identical they are to each other, the main difference being their social collectibles and the latter having more gameplay variety. And I know for a fact there's a third game, Attack of the Rhinox, but if memory serves me right, that one especially plays a rather different game altogether, so that'll be reserved for another day. Anywho, some history time. A year after the release of Year of the Dragon, Spyro began making his move onto other platforms, starting with the Game Boy Advance. Developed by Digital Eclipse, 3 portable games were released on a yearly basis, starting with this one, Season of Ice, released in 2001. How's it hold up personally? That's what I'm here for once again in this Spyro marathon of mine. Kicking us off with Season of Ice. So what's our story this time? Simply put, Spyro and friends are just chilling out, maxing, relaxing, all cool, out shooting some b-ball outside of the school until they get a note from Zoe, warning them that she and all the other fairies in the world have been frozen and held captive by a new evil force. Bianca just so happens to remember that she left her spellbook behind, which of course is being used by said antagonists of our journey, that being none other than a measly Rhinoc named Grendor. All you need to know is that he somehow got a hold of her magic and has been messing around with it since, resulting in giving himself 2 heads and causing him to freeze all the fairies. Our job being, of course, to rescue them all and put a stop to Grendor's evil ways. Now that the main objective is clear, that's where the game starts. Yeah, the whole adventure begins thing can only last for so long, you know? So immediately I want to touch upon the gameplay, as it's the most radically different from the past games as far as I'm aware. While the console Spyro games are more circular and wide open, playing on the Game Boy allows for a more isometric point of view, with the maps feeling somewhat linear in design. And while that's fine in its own right, I mean this is the Game Boy we're talking about, it does have its share of problems I'll soon be getting into. Spyro can still fire, charge, jump, and glide, keeping that old familiar playstyle intact. We still collect treasure throughout levels, and our collectibles this time consist of fairies, each sharing a different color schemes based on the 4 seasons of the game. Some fairies are scattered throughout, while others are attained through missions and objectives throughout the game, such as clearing out all the enemies on screen, firing a certain number of targets, and the like. You walk up to them, flame them, and they'll be free from their icy prison, each praising Spyro for the help.
Purple is my favorite color!
All in all, there are 4 hubs in the game, following the seasons much like Spyro 2. We start in autumn, then move on to winter, spring, and end at summer. Each hub consists of about 3 levels each, 1 speedway, and 1 special area for Sparks to explore. All courtesy of having to pay money bags with full access, by the way. Yep, old habits die hard, I bet. Each of the levels look just about fine for what they're worth. Being a handheld title, you can tell they were making do with what they got, capturing as much of the classic Spyro style as possible. Some of them I've liked, such as the world populated with mermaids, helping the professor travel through time, a land full of llama people, to name some. On the flip side, I'm not too fan of stuff like the lava level, which by the way is the first one you start off with. Dealing with bees in Honey Marsh? Nope, not that one. And funnily enough, going through a hummingbird fort, which is weird considering my last encounter with hummingbirds was much more awesome last I checked. There are even levels that take inspiration from past games, such as Roman City feeling like another sunny villa, Panda Garden most likely based on Bamboo Terrace, and we even see the fireflies from Spooky Swamp in one level, minus the whole haiku shtick. I've always liked that gimmick, what a shame. The Sparks levels are exactly as we remember them from Spyro 3, a top-down shooter perspective that really kinda works for the Game Boy. The goal of these levels are virtually cut and dry. You grab colored keys, fight the boss at the end, and save the fairies held within. Speedways play a little differently than you remember. Instead of clearing out all the targets in the area within a time limit, you're taking on a stage of objectives on screen, one at a time, playing more like a rail-scrolling shoot-'em-up. All with a mini-boss at the end of each stage. Some targets give you gems, some increase your time, and hitting some obstacles actually take time away from you, which honestly hurts these levels far more than it should. And the idea that you have to play all these a second time on a harder difficulty? No thanks. Now, as far as content's concerned, what you see is exactly what you get. Not an awful lot to write home about, but still good enough for a Game Boy title. While we're here though, I may as well discuss those problems I've had playing throughout. While I don't really mind the isometric playstyle of Game Boy Spyro, it does lead to a lot of leap of faith moments. The depth perception in this game is virtually hard to decipher at times, leaving you to just glide and hover blindly, thinking you're gonna land just fine, only to go off course and lose a life because of poor judgment. Now, as far as I'm aware, the only determining factor is the shadow below Spyro, but that's basically it. You can also hold down L to look all around you, but that only takes you so far. On another note, it's fairly easy to get lost in this game, as the level's map maps kind of blend in together, with very little pathways indicating where exactly you need to go. A map feature would have been nice, but last I checked, there is none, and I absolutely fail to understand why that is. And playing through these levels and clearing select missions wouldn't be so much of a pain if it wasn't for one little thing that holds this back. Of course, I'm not gonna deny I've lost a couple lives playing this game, some lost in the midst of performing side missions like firing all the targets in the arena and even chasing these damn thieves again. Now, you'd assume the game will remember your progress on that level and you'll be able to pick right where you left off after saving a ferry or something, right? Well, here's the thing. When you die, you start all the way back at the beginning of the level with absolutely no save points in place whatsoever, leaving your progress, save for torching Rhinox, all for squat. Forgive my saying, but that is absolutely terrible gaming design. For a game like Spyro, it would be absolutely sinful not to have some sort of checkpoint system in place. So you can probably imagine how frustrated I was having to repeat certain levels due to one little mishap, be it falling off edges or getting killed once in a while. Not very fun now, is it? And on a side note, I absolutely hate chasing thieves in this game, putting it at that and leaving it at that. I did some research as I was playing through these to make sure I wasn't missing anything, and I was baffled to find that the issues I'm complaining about now were ultimately fixed when this game was shipped to Japan. For the record, this game came out in October 2001. The Japanese part was released in December 2002. So, geez, what the hell took so long? In any case, may as well move on to the big boss himself, Grendor. Throughout the game, you'll be fighting this guy twice. Once after finishing the Winter Fairy World, and once more at the end of the game once you've acquired all 99 fairies. And both battles cosmetically play out the exact same way, the only difference being the color palettes of the map and the fact that the final battle is understandably much longer. Grendor will confront you for the progress you're making, and from there the battle kicks off. He'll shield himself with firepower, your goal being to ram him when he's open. Repeat this a couple times until he's down, and that's it, unfortunately. No increase in difficulty, nothing to spice up the battle, no major death hazards of any kind save for the molten lava you'll be falling into on the occasion. Just knock him out a couple times till he's done. Even for a system like this, I gotta say, this boss fight is extremely underwhelming and honestly kind of boring to play through. Made even longer with the second round going up to 8 hits as opposed to 5, and he attacks with ice power instead of fire. No real difference, just much more of a drag. After finishing him off a second time, your adventure ends with having rescued Zoe from Grendor's clutches. And Grendor, being perhaps the most pathetic boss in Spyro history to be quite frank, pleads Zoe to cure him of his cursed headache, returning him back to a typical pink Rhinox, vowing never to mess with magic again. Yep, I'm pretty sure of that, dude. That's about it for covering Season of Ice. If you manage to 100% the whole game, gathering all the gems as well as the 100 fairies required, your end reward is nothing short of anticlimactic, just some shooting minigames for sparks, that's really about it. At the end of the day, it's not that great a start for Spyro's run with the Game Boy, but by no means would I place this amongst the worst to come out of the series. It's severely flawed, but still has some redeeming values going for it. Wouldn't really recommend it personally, but if you're insanely curious, then by all means do check it out if you can. That said, how does the next game hold up? Moving on to Spyro 2, Season of Flame. In the following year, 2002, sometime before Enter the Dragonfly, we were greeted to another handheld adventure with our purple boy. This story this time. Spyro and friends return from vacation to find the Dragon Realms is now freezing cold. All the fireflies in the world are stolen, and without their magic, the fiery warmth of the dragons cease to exist. My only problem with this is that we've never heard of these fireflies up until now, so the importance of needing them in a world populated with dragons fueled by magic just raises even more questions than necessary. I thought of that, then I realized these games aren't necessarily canon to console Spyro games, so whatever I guess. Anyway, the goal of this game is pretty straightforward. Collect all the fireflies, retrieve all the gems, all the Spyro stuff we're used to is still intact. Funnily enough, this was the first Game Boy Spyro I've played, and looking back on it, I'm honestly kinda glad I did. Cause a great chunk of the problems I've mentioned during Season of Ice were significantly touched upon. You no longer have to worry about getting lost. There's now a map system in place right from the get-go. So even if the level design is basic and plain in select worlds, you can at least be able to identify where you are. And thank God we've got a checkpoint system in place once again. Gameplay is virtually the same, but it's tweaked in all the right marks, allowing for an even more enjoyable playthrough. And I gotta love how the closest thing we get to voices in this game is pretty much the equivalent of Banjo-Kazooie lingo. A new feature in this game is the use of elemental breaths, and people thought Enter the Dragonfly was the first to capitalize on the idea. In all seriousness though, these are actually pretty fun to try out. Your standard breaths are fire and ice, with special power-ups in place to fuel your fiery, ice-cold abilities. There's even some instances of lightning breath in layer sections. Ice breath can of course be used to freeze and charge through enemies, but its primary use involves freezing up fireflies to collect them. I do like the implementation here better than Enter the Dragonfly for full disclosure, even if they are as situational here as they were in the latter game. Fireflies can be found in the usual Spyro collectathon fashion, either right in plain sight or sometimes they'll be handed out to you through friendly characters and NPCs. Sometimes up front and other times through the usual challenges and minigames. Much like Spyro 3, these levels have challenge portals where you can perform all sorts of missions like keeping milk cool for a short amount of time, chasing thieves around yet again, playing a couple rounds of hockey, or keeping enemies at bay while a cake is being made. Some of these I liked while others didn't sit well with me, like chasing imps around or the occasional obstacle course, jumping from platforms within a time limit. Now the game consists of 3 hubs with about 7 levels per map, and gone are the speedways and Sparks levels from before. In its place are special levels dedicated to other playable characters. Sheila the Kangaroo and Agent 9 from Year of the Dragon are here to help us throughout the game, each giving us more playstyles to work with. The former, by the way, you gotta pay up for. Again, money bags. That said, Sheila's levels play much more like Q*bert stages, with the goal being to stomp on all the targets surrounding the place. Far more limited than the last time she played, but for a system like this, it's good enough. And Agent 9's levels are side-scrolling shoot-em-ups, these being somewhat of a highlight. You can recharge your lasers once you run out, double that firepower, or even refuel your health as you make your way through firing away at all those Rhinox. Awesome stuff. I've gone this far without highlighting music, I realize, but that's mainly because with this being on the Game Boy Advance, I don't really see a need for me to do so. That's not to say it's bad by any means, it's fine, just not really anything noteworthy that stands out to me. All these improvements and positives said, are there anything that holds this game back? Well, that'd be the boss fights. And no, it's not for the fact that we're fighting Crush, Gulp, and Ripto again. I'm well over that now. After collecting a certain amount of fireflies, you'll be able to face them off one by one through each of the hubs you clear, and they're all honestly too easy the more I think about it. Crush's battle is pretty standard. He'll try to freeze you off, your goal being to keep him held captive and ram him down. A simple 3 hits and he's out. Gulp's encounter is ridiculously easy to skim through. He suits himself up this time, especially after our last encounter. This time he's basically just firing rockets at you. They make it so you're to fire the rockets right back at him, and by complete accident, I was able to knock him out 3 times in a matter of seconds without even realizing it. Note, another 3-hit boss fight. And Ripto, while it's miles better than what Enter the Dragonfly cooked up, it's still vastly underwhelming for what it's worth. He'll shield himself off with magical cards, with power-ups aiding you surrounding the place. Using the power-ups Super Flame, Super Ice, and Lightning Breath, you take out the cards one by one and ram him when he's open. Do this another 3 times and your adventure is finito. Worth noting, by the way, that with each battle cleared, you do earn special abilities like being able to charge through much stronger boulders and gaining an additional health point, so that kinda evens things out with how simplistic these fights play out. Kind of. The game ends with your presenting the Dragon Elder all the fireflies you found, restoring peace to the Dragon Realms once again. Sparks will go missing, and cue credits as we see Sparks has found an admirer. That's pretty cute. Your completion reward is pretty much just more bonus content from here. Defeating Ripto gives you what's essentially a game of checkers. Completing the game 100% gives you a bonus Sparks minigame that's more filler content than the last game, hate to say. Now all this said, I've still had a much better time with Season of Flame than I did Season of Ice. Between the two, I'd personally recommend this one all the more with its improved stellar gameplay, fun and challenging missions, and variety between playable characters. For what it's worth, playing through these games back to back was a bit of a breeze and honestly pretty fun at times. Some frustrations here and there, but I've honestly dealt with much worse. Now I'd like to apologize if things were shorter this time around, and I hope my time with Season of Ice and Season of Flame was good enough for you guys to enjoy all the while. I'll of course be coming back to the world of Game Boy Spyro another day, and I'll be seeing you guys next time. And no, I've got no ending joke this time, sorry to disappoint. See you later now!